Ba-na-na-na, ba-na-na-na. I like the bop. I like the bop. How is everyone doing on this fine Tuesday morning? How it was? All right. So this was our first one, right? We're gonna get into it because I think that this is a pretty fair comment. I don't hate. I don't hate. But we are back on a Tuesday morning for the morning climb. I have a maybe slow July, so we might get these in for a couple times this month. We'll see. But it felt like a pretty good day to come in and talk about Pro Play Summit Texas, which was a pretty crazy 3 days for me, for sure. So I love to touch on this, right? So we have during a holiday. So I think that you can look at this two ways, and I think that if you're upset that it was a holiday, completely fair. I can totally understand why there is a particular part of the community that would be pretty upset about this. But if you look at it from the other point of view and you say like, okay, it's impossible to schedule an event that's going to be perfect for everyone, right? Like it's not realistic. It does not actually exist. Someone out there will see a date and be like, "Oh no, I already have a planned wedding," or "Oh no, I have a birthday," or like it's my kid's birthday or it's my wife's birthday. Like no matter what, it's going to be very very difficult, um to see like what could actually be perfect for everyone. But if you look at it for the other side and we say, okay, it's a family weekend, it's a family holiday, it's in the middle of summer, it's a little difficult. I think that in a lot of ways that played to the strength of the video because July 4th falling on a Friday is, a government holiday. A lot of people don't have to take off from work, which means they can kind of go work Thursday, maybe take a half day Thursday, and then fly out Thursday night and then be there for Friday and not have to worry about that whole day off, which I think is a big deal, right? I think that that's kind of important. Um, so I think if you look at it like that and say, hey, what is the average person and how am I going to hit? I think that it's kind of fair for it to be targeted on holidays. I think you could say the same about Labor Day weekend, as an example, maybe Memorial Day weekend. Like, I think that these are actually pretty good targeted days, understanding that people are going to have off on a Friday or a Monday potentially because of the holiday. So I think that that's actually kind of just difficult as a whole. Like if obviously, if you're a family and your wife doesn't play the game and she doesn't want to travel and you don't want to leave your kids, I totally get all those things. It's totally fair. But, when you look at it from the other side of the coin, like I said, I think that the government holiday actually could have helped increase in general. So we'll move to Tim real quick. So Tim, Amber having a very high win rate makes me sad as a Blurple player. Yeah, obviously it didn't win either tournament, so that is notable. But it had a finals, and it had a top 8 this past weekend. The exact same deck, played by two different players, played by Andre and played by Hale. And it's a bit scary because this is definitely a deck that, it won a Disney Lorcana challenge, right? So it's tough, but it's also one of the more difficult decks to play in Lorcana. And I'm not saying that like there's an easy deck, but I think that the reward for the practice and participation of like understanding exactly those decks matchups, really understanding what your plan is and how to like, execute that plan fairly is very difficult. I remember leading up to DLC Toronto, it was a deck that I had played a bunch and I decided like to not play it in Toronto because I'm like, you know what, I played it a bunch, but I don't know that I played it as much as some of these other players. So I'll just, go to a comfort pick because I think during the month of October was like a pretty busy month work wise for me. So like when I kind of showed up, um, it was like one of those where I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll just play what I played in Toronto, in Texas, which when I finished 71st, that was my best finish in a DLC. I bounced back. I didn't do very well, but me and Nunez played the same deck and he finished in the final. So clearly it was like a good decision to play the deck. It just wasn't my day. But, I think that deck is so difficult that I don't I think that if you see it in set championships, it'll be like one of two players. It'll be the guy that's been playing it forever, or the girl that's playing it forever, like whatever, like that player that has a million reps and like you were gonna see them anyway, or you're gonna see someone that's like new to the deck and you might still kind of be able to outplay them. So I think that it's either way should be okay. Question of the day. The cut for pricing between two events, I felt like should have been the same between the two events in one way or another. I absolutely agree with this comment. I think that the idea that on day one there was 330-ish players and we paid out to the top 32, and then the next day was a more expensive event with a bigger prize pool, and there was no payment down to top 32. I think that that's a miss. I think that this is one of the most fair uh, pieces of feedback that PPG can get. And I hope that in Texas they learn from that. And I hope that they, if enough people are out there talking about it, then I think it's pretty fair, to hope and kind of assess it. Like, you know what, maybe that was just a blunder. Like, I think, really what happened was that on Friday it was announced as a 5K. And then when they went from the 5K to the 10K, they're like, oh, like in my brain, like I have to expand this. And I think maybe for that 15K prize payout, it just wasn't thought about because the prize didn't go up. So I think that's more just like taking in, understanding what the, kind of like what the price structure has to be and what it looked like and how we can do better. And I think that, I think that's something that Pro Play will probably take into big consideration. And hopefully moving forward, you'll see like these larger events, which, once you hit certain player caps, and, once you talk about going from like 8 rounds to 9 rounds and you're just getting into a bigger prize structure in general, you're getting bigger entry fees. I think it's pretty fair to say like, okay, even if the top 32 got like a box of Raina Jafar, that's better than just like nothing, right? Like specifically, if you looked at the standings, it was a clean cut at 7-2 all the way to 32nd place. So at a clean cut at 32 at 7-2, if all those players got a buy from 17 to 32, I think that that's like really, really, really fair. So I think that hopefully that's like, hey, let's hope that happens, right? Buys. This is a really tough one. So I'm definitely not 100% positive. I had a lot of responsibility this past weekend, but I think of the majority of the players that receive the buys, a very low turnover rate capitalized on them. Jordan is the one that absolutely comes to mind. He won the 10K on Friday, like he won it on Saturday morning. He legitimately only had about a 17-minute break. The finals was still being played like during the round 2 of the event. So it's not like they had this whole crazy event and then Jordan got to rest. Like, no, like Jordan literally finished his game and I said, "Hey Jordan, can you please come do an interview with me? Because we have some downtime in between round and we're going to hype you up to bring you back on the stream." And, we did that. And all of a sudden, like, he has 5 minutes left in round. So we had a very, very low turnover to even like go back right into the next event. And then he was also the only player, I think, that made top 16 that had buys. I could be wrong. There could have been like another person that had it that might have snuck in top 16. I'm just not remembering because maybe it was from like a store buy qualifier or something like that. So I don't hold me to it too much, but I think it was a pretty low turnover. And listen, I understand like buys are powerful. Like they're very, very powerful, but the players that earned them, they weren't necessarily easy. Like specifically the people that earned them on Friday, top 8ing a 330 plus player event and then getting a buy in like another tournament. That's, I think it's a pretty fair prize, honestly. So I know Habibi was in the running. Like Habibi would had a round 1Y and he was I'm pretty sure he finished somewhere in the top 32 in the main event. So I'm sure there's a couple players that were rewarded a little bit by them, but I don't know. I think it's tough. I understand why people don't like them, but I do think that as like competitive players, it gives you another reason to go to a store qualifier, like to support the store for running this tournament, showing up and playing, and then like being rewarded for doing that in a pretty powerful way. I will say there was only 25 players, I believe, that received a buy in round one. So 25 of, the 400-ish that were queued. It's a pretty fair percentage. But I don't know. I think it's tough. I think it's a really fair reward for what you had to do to get them. I don't think they were just given out, if that makes any sense. Dan was more willing to ask his teammates more questions than not his teammates. So this is I'll take the critique for sure. I think that a lot of the interviews that I do, and honestly, I haven't watched any of them back, but a lot of that I think just has to be with being comfortable, right? Like the people, there were a couple people that got up there to do an interview, and they didn't necessarily want to do an interview. Um, and that's also fine. Like they could have declined. There was no one was being forced to be on stream. No one was forced to being interviewed. Like everyone had a choice. But obviously, when you look at the structure of it, a lot of it has to come down with timing. How much timing is left in the round? Like when I was doing those interviews, a lot of the time before I went out to talk to the player, I would look at the clock and say, okay, how much time is left in round? Like how much time do I really have? How much time do I want to give this player to go and make sure they still have a break and they're not rushed? So I don't know if it's fair to say this yet. I have not watched all the interviews back yet, so I cannot tell you what the average time was for everything. But obviously, when it comes to my own team, like the comfort level is it's a million, right? Like I'm comfortable with them, they're comfortable with me. It's like having a conversation that we have every day, right? So that's probably why it made it felt that way because it's just like a clear, comfort thing. But that was definitely not by intent, by any which means. It wasn't to give anyone any more time or any more limelight than another player. And I hope that when I go back and I rewatch some of this, like this comment honestly doesn't end up being that true. That's but I listen, I'm all for the feedback. I am. Pretty true, the deck is super hard to play. I got smashed by it last night. This is really one of one-ofs. It was very funny. It was a very fun event. Day 1 and 2 were awesome. The day 3 versus 3 rules need to be much more clear. So this is a pretty fair comment. I think that it was very, very weird, the design. And I did talk to the head judge of the event. I'm misremembering her name right now, but she said that she'll take that feedback and hopefully moving forward she'll be able to like make the rules a little bit more clear and make it a little bit more easy. So that is definitely it. What is RB mindset to only having 3 DLCs and also to only put the one? Okay, so listen, this isn't about the Pro Play Summit, but I'll take a time to answer it. Not a big deal. If you are just coming in, this past weekend was Pro Play Summit. I would love to know, what did you hate about the Pro Play Summit? Like, I think it's very easy to say what you like about it, but if there was something you did not like, I certainly want to know about it. It's important to me to kind of relay that information to let people know, like, hey, this is what people really were upset about, and hopefully we can improve this in the future. So if you're coming in a little bit late to the stream and you want to get in on the Q of the D, right, then this is the way you can do it. But Papa Burgundy here. So RB mindset, right? Like obviously, I don't work for RB, right? Like I don't work for them. I don't speak for them. I'm not one of your content creators that's been given gifts by Ravensburg or anything like that. So I have no problem critiquing what they have done in the past, their success, their failure. Like I've said this a million times. I'm one of the most honest people in the game. Like I get on here and I give you my legitimately humble opinion of things because that's who I am. I'd rather be honest than be fake. Like that's what you get when you get me. Specifically in these live sessions, like sometimes I will say things that I probably shouldn't, but they're the truth and I'm just like, I don't really feel bad about it because it's how I feel. So I think that the design of season 2 is a big picture design. I think that when you really look at it and you really start to understand it, it's just saying like, hey, it's the second season. We're trying to go global. And in order to go global, we only have so much assets. We only have so much money that can really put into these things. So because of that, you have to understand that they have to hit these different regions. They have to have the different parts of the globe, because this game is becoming a global game. And like in year 2, to say I'm a global game at the highest point of hosting these tournaments that are going to be 2,000 plus players in just the main event, not including attendees and like all the side events and things like that. I am very happy as a Disney Lorcana player. Honestly, I'm very happy with the structure. I literally do not care about any of like the points or addresses of the venues. To me, they're meaningless. All that matters is that they exist and that we have a time frame from a few weeks ago to understand, like, if I want to go to these events and I want to attend them, then I think that I can make them happen. And I've heard, obviously I put myself in a position to where if I want to attend an event, I can go to an event. It doesn't even matter what it was, right? Like it's like it's just the way that I have positioned myself as a content creator, as a face of the community. Like if I want to go to an event, I will go to an event. Like I totally can just do that. And I understand that not everyone can. But when I look at it and say, okay, if if they were announced the final week of June, and let's say I could not make October happen, at least I know, like, all right, listen, I know that in January there is a DLC. I know where it's at. I know where it's located. I can start doing the research right now saying, okay, my plane tickets cost this much. The hotel is probably going to cost this much. Like the Airbnb, like whatever it is. I also know that like, hey, if I'm a person by myself, maybe I go to my store and say, hey, listen, like I really want to go to Richmond. Do you want to go to Richmond? Like maybe we can plan this together so we can try and make it cheaper, find an Airbnb. I think that Ravensburger did one thing correct for sure, and it's give everybody equal opportunity and time to plan for these events. And this is also a video that we're going to be coming out with on the channel because I don't think people understand the EV or expected value of a DLC. But I think that most people, if you understand the design of a DLC, or as an example, the design of a convention, you have the ability to absolutely free roll that weekend. So we're putting together a piece of content that's gonna like really explain to players how they can make those venues and make those events way more like accessible and profitable for them. So that's something if you want to hear more about, like just stay tuned. I promise you it's something we're gonna cover because I know it's a big deal to players, and I know that there's a lot of people that are very upset that, like, for North America, they're all in like the Midwest. And listen, I got to fly to 2 of them also. The other one I got to drive 8 hours for. So it's not like they're right here in my home yard. It's still, it's still a pain for me too. It's not like I'm super excited. I don't love Milwaukee by any which means either, right? So and that's not a dig at Milwaukee. It's just that it is to me Milwaukee's expensive. To me Indianapolis is expensive. So I think it's expensive for the majority of the people unless you just happen to live there, and if you do, congrats, honestly. But it's no different than last year. If you lived in Vegas, congrats. If you lived in Seattle, big congrats. If you lived in Anaheim or Los Angeles, big congrats. Like you got 3 events on the West Coast, so I think it's kind of fair, honestly. But to me, like I said, it's not. It is what it is. It is. 3v3 was kind of a mess. Would love to give feedback to PPG. I would love. Hey, Jorge, shout it out, bro. Let me know why it was a mess. I think that the biggest problem with 3v3 was the seating assignments, right? Like it was just very, very confusing. I think Hannah, I love the team aspect. I think the sealed and limited would be more interesting. Otherwise, it was purely who got the best matchups. Yeah, and I think that is a flaw with the format of 3v3. And I mean, for what it's worth, talking to a couple players this weekend, I think it kind of showed the flaw of the 3-day format also. A lot of the people that I talked to this weekend about the viewing experience of Worlds was that you had some of the best players in the game, like playing against one another in matchups that just felt 20-0. So I don't like, obviously there's a little bit more strategy to that because of banning in situations, but this for the 3v3 format in Disney Lorcana, it's just sit down and hope I don't pair, my worst matchup, right? And I think that this has always been an issue with 3v3. It's the reason why I have like no, like I don't care about it at all. I don't ever want to play it. I played one tournament in chapter 1 and I have never looked back. I'm just like, yeah, it's not for me. So I understand that people really like team games. The limited or seal thing, I think that's cool. I could see that maybe being an option. I know I talked to, shout out to Hannah, by the way, love her. Wife of TFM Christian, our digital team member for the ICL. I talked to Christian about this, and I said, I think if every team got a box of cards and we're told build 3 decks out of this box of cards, that could be more interesting. But it would also be a little more skill intensive. I don't know how inviting that would be. I think it just really depends on like what's the purpose of this event. If the purpose of this event is for like 3 friends to just sit down and play Disney Lorcana together, I saw a dad with his 2 sons. I saw a group of content creators that were playing together. Like, I think that if the design is just like, hey, we're just here to like have fun and it's like low stakes, I don't think it like, I think everything that I find flaw with it is thrown out the window. It's not really important. So if you're trying to fix the format, that's a whole other situation. But I think if just the design is like, hey, let's just like play some games with our friends, then I don't know. Tough to say. The 15 take content was very limited. I think top 32 would have been better. All right. So because of how the event ran, right? And for what it's worth, I think even more so now because of how the DLCs are going to be run and how they're going to cut the top 32. I think that if we get to 256 players in these third-party events, and this is not just Pro Play, this is like any of them, like Pro Play, CCS, like any of these events that have hit more than 256 players and have to go 9 rounds, I think the top 32 is kind of fair, specifically because it's going to prepare us for the DLC circuit. And I think that people should just get accustomed to it in a way. But I know there's like a lot of people out there that don't love top 32. And I'm kind of just like, whatever the tournament rules are the tournament rules. But as I said earlier, the biggest problem with the top 32 for this was that the idea that they didn't get any prizing. I think at the very least, the top 32 should get prizing. Would have loved one in Canada. I think that this is the best argument for North America. Honestly, I think that I don't care that there's 3 in the Midwest at all, but I do care that there was not one in Canada. I think it would have been pretty fair to put one there. Doesn't really matter where it is, Vancouver, Toronto, like whatever, doesn't really matter. But I think that it being North America and then them not getting one kind of sucks, kind of, similar to the UK and Europe and things like that. So I don't know, it's tough. I think that the idea that we're going to have 9 DLCs now in North America between season 1 and season 2, and only one of them was in Canada, does feel a little rough. I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful in general that we're going to get to a season 2 or like in season 3 where it's bigger. There's also, there's definitely a world where the North American Continental Championship is in Canada. Like that's totally possible. Same thing for Europe. Like it could totally end up being in the UK for that. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I think it's tough, but I don't know. Nonetheless, before we move on, a couple new viewers again. The cue of the day here. It is, what did you hate about Pro Play Summit Texas? We're trying to learn, trying to get better. Specifically, for me, as I'm going to get into like really talking about my role in the event, because I'm not certain, I'm not certain if everyone knew what my role was leading up to the event, which is kind of funny, but it's okay. So I really, really want to talk about my experience there, because it was definitely something I've never done before, which was cool. Yeah. Okay. This is a long one. At 3v3, judges were kind of missing a lot of the times. Seating was not enforced. They said you could talk to your teammate, but not too much. But one of the players talked to his teammates as soon as they mulliganed game one on the last round. His match went to rounds and drew. Guy in T in the middle literally played 2 games and resulted in a draw, as my friends were knocked out, uprising because of the slow play that was not going to be allowed. I'll come back to Jorge in a second here, but TFM Alex says he hated his top 16 matchup. He got 2-0 in top 16, friends. All right. So, like, this is a lot. And I think, look up, that's ridiculous. So I think, Jorge, the takeaway to this summary is that judges have to be there. And I think that that's very, very fair. And I do not want to make an excuse for this at all. You know, I know that by the time we got to this point on Sunday, judges were already sent home. So they were later on staff. They had other tournaments going on. And I think that that is not enough of an excuse at all to say why there were not judges there for this. So I think that that is like really the key takeaway here of all of this is like you just layered a bunch of things, but the truth at the end of the day is they need to have judges for the tournament. You know, like it's just that simple. They definitely need they definitely need judges on the staff. So yeah, very, very fun, very, very fun. But yeah, so my experience at Disney Lorcana, you know, I'm gonna bring this up real quick, and we're gonna make this big. Watching from a streaming point of view, it seemed like a good event, but apparently there were issues. I mean, nothing's perfect ever, right? Like, and I'll bring you up so everyone can see. Nothing is perfect ever. I think from like where I was and how I was like following the event, there's a lot of things that were done very, very well. And you know, and I think that you know we can nitpick everything, right? Like it's super possible to do that. But when you talk about having a 9-round tournament finish both days by like 7 p.m., you know, the idea that we came in, we played Disney Lorcana for 9 rounds and we were eating dinner by 8. Listen, anyone that was at DLC Fort Worth and remembers that tournament, we were literally getting kicked out of the building at 10 p.m. Like our tournament, I was sitting there waiting for results to see if I made day 2 at like 9:45 at night. So the idea that we paced the tournament so well, that it moved so very well, that everyone was like could have left by 7 p.m. I think that that is incredible. Like if there is one thing that I can say for sure that the judges and PBG crushed this weekend, it's that the tournament flow was that. Tournament seating as an example, like the event was supposed to start at 9. The player, they didn't have player meetings, which I won't lie, I don't love that they didn't have player meetings. I think that if they had told everyone like event starts at 8:45 and they were gonna have a player meeting at 8:45 so they could drop people, that's a better experience for everyone. I know for a fact in the main event on Saturday, there were several people that ended up getting free wins because their opponents didn't show up. And like that gets avoided in the player meeting when people don't show up. So I would love for that to kind of happen for what's worth. But, you know, aside from that, when a 9-round best of 3 goes quick, yeah, man. In a way, yes, but in a way, no. So I just think that the judging staff for this one was a little bit more like, hey, pick up your pace of play, whereas the DLCs were definitely more lenient and more inviting to that. But well, the other big thing, you know, and this is another thing, and I know people, this is a topic for always, like lunch break versus no lunch break. Like there was not a lunch break at all. But again, if you start a tournament at 9 a.m., you start a tournament at 10 a.m., and the tournament's moving well, there's a venue in the room, right? Like that. I think on Friday there was no venue because it was a holiday. So getting food on Friday was a little bit more difficult, a little bit more tricky. But on Saturday, they had a vendor in the room that had food. So if you got done your round, you can go and get a snack. If you had a friend, a teammate or whatever that could have gotten you a snack, like it wasn't that difficult if they had known, like, hey, if you get done first, go and get something. But like the idea that no matter what, you were done by 7, like the event was over by like 6:45, I think. I might have felt like it was 7 or later because at the end of each day I had to like stay and clean up and like do some stuff and like make sure everything was like, situated for the next day. But in general, the tournament was over by 6:30, 7 o'clock, which means, you're not eating dinner at 10, like you're eating dinner at 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock. So I think that that's like a huge takeaway for them in a big way. What's good, Questicle? How are you? My question, go for it. My question. So why do you think everyone has pushed aside the Tramp Chernobog aggro in the meta? And what do you think of this deck still has legs when wins set championships? Listen, you can ask Chaotic here. He lost to Dogs in top 8, or in top 16 of the event this past weekend. So I certainly think it's fine. A big thing for this particular comment is that I think 10 decks, 15 decks even maybe can win a set championship. So if you're a Dog's friend, if you like, the deck, I don't think that you need to be like count yourself out in any way. Specifically at set champs, if you are a better than average player, you can probably walk into those events and just be successful with any of those decks. So I certainly think that if you like the deck, if you know the matchups, you're probably going to be okay. So I wouldn't be worried about that at all. Do you think there should be a penalty for slow play? Oh yeah, absolutely. If you go to turns 3 times in a tournament, your next match round is a loss. It's always the same people locally to go all the time. I think that the definition of slow play is very difficult, right? Because it's when it comes to slow play and it comes to penalties, it's always about the intent. So is the intent of the player playing slowly malicious? And sometimes that answer is certainly yes. But I feel that most times the answer is no, which is why there's not a penalty for it. But I have to add this one in here, that if players don't get penalties, then they don't have a reason to change. And I think that that's a big deal. If they think, right, like if the player themselves that is playing slow continues, like consistently makes up the excuse that the time and round isn't enough and cannot analyze that they might just be the problem. And I think that this is very true for even some of the best players in the game, if I'm being honest. They just play way too slow. They overanalyze, and then therefore they end up getting unintentional draws. This happens, honestly, even at the top tables with the best players in the game. So I think that the real problem here for any judge trying to give a warning or trying to give a penalty is to figure out intent. Now, what I should say and what I should be noted is that when you're a judge and you're looking at these tournaments and you can notice trends, if a player legitimately does go to time 3 rounds and a judge doesn't notice it, then that's potentially on the judge again, because like there's only a certain amount of judges in the room. All the judges are waiting for that same table to go to turn over to the next round. So I think that that's like just a question of like, hey, how do we better note this? And I know that in Melee you can put notes on things and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that it's difficult. I think that going all the way to the point to rewarding a penalty for it it's really tough unless you know for sure that's malicious. And sometimes it's so difficult to prove that in intent. And then like my final go home for this is that I just wish that unintentional draws did not exist. I think that they are the worst part of any game when they exist. We have a rule set for in top cut when it is timed that the game will end with a declared winner. I would always vote for removing unintentional draws, period, and just implementing those rules all the time. So that just gets completely removed from the game also. Because if any player understands that like they can lose the game at a given point, because of the time and round, it forces everybody to play different and it challenges you in a different way and it punishes players for playing too slow. So I think that like that is the key for me, is that I would just 100% remove unintentional draws from the game, period. So yeah. So yeah. So yeah. I believe the penalty ends up being an extra 2 turns for each warning, and then the turns in the game lost after a third warning. So Orion, when it comes to judge rulings, I always defer to Orion like 100% of the time. So yeah, you know. Huh. Let me take a swig of coffee. How's everyone's morning going? You know, where are you watching from? How's everyone hanging out? Thanks for hanging out with me this morning, by the way. This is very impromptu in a way. I got home last night at midnight, and I was like, hey, you know what? I haven't done a morning climb in a while. Why don't I? You know, I'm off tomorrow. Why don't I go in, chat with everybody? So thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. Back at work. Bummer, bummer. I mean, you know, I always consider content work, so technically I'm working too. Specifically now, it looks like my July is going to be kind of slow. So probably a lot more content coming for me for sure. All right. I'm making sounds over here on Discord and I need to get rid of it. See you later. You going to Milwaukee. Listen, Quest for Cole, I'm going to go to as many Disney Lorcana challenges as I possibly can go to. And my minimum goal is 6 and my stretch goal is 10. That's that's for me. I like to hit 10 of them. So we'll see. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe something's possible. If I win one of these things, I'll go to all of them. If I show up in Bologna and win the tournament, I'll be at all of them. I promise. But yeah, so for me, Milwaukee is definitely on the docket. Play one, cast one, and meet everyone. If I had the ability to do that, I would be for it. That's for sure. It would be fun. It would be fun. All right, so let's let me have some fun here. Let's bring this up. Yell at me if the noise is loud, because I have no way of knowing if this is going to be too loud or not. Right, so just like scream in chat, and I will I will do my best to fix it immediately. All right, so this is the cast from this weekend. And I love, I'm going to go really large here for a second. So we're going to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff from this weekend. So here's Liam and Katie, and this is before round 1, or this is round 1 of the tournament. Now, what I love about this setting here, right, is that we have Liam, we have Katie, and then we have this black, like, cloth thing behind them with 2 overlays for PPG and Pro Play Summit. And when I explained to you the rooms that we were working in, so like the stage was the stage, and then on the right side and the left side were 4 dressing rooms. So we had to set up the commentators in one of these dressing rooms, and the room was like this super weird angled. It had, you know, shelves all around it. We couldn't really fit a table in there correctly. It was like, it was a big, like, kind of hassle on Thursday afternoon when we were there, trying to figure out like how are we gonna make this work. And what we ended up doing was like literally taking one of those 8-foot tables that you guys were playing on the field and stuff like that, and kind of the same stuff that was on the feature match area, closed it up, and then put it on top of the shelving in the back. And then with that, there was a camera behind it, locked up on the wall. And the room, since they were like dressing rooms, there was like lights on, like literally, like it was a mirror. And it was like, if you're looking at the screen right now, it was like lights, 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 lights. Like it was just lights literally like framing the whole mirror and everything like that. So they were everywhere. So we knew like we had to be in this room. We knew we had to figure out a way to make it work. We had to find this backdrop because like without this backdrop, you would just see literally out into the other rooms, into the where the featurettes was. You would have seen the producer back here, either like shout out to Sasuke, Wes, or Loaf, who are mostly doing the production side of it here. And then like out front, obviously anyone that came up for a feature match or saw the feature match there, you saw Austin and Zach for the most part, like running that whole area. So this just whole thing for it to come together, they literally threw this black like blanket up. I don't even know I don't even know what this is. I think it's a sheet. I'm really not sure. I never got the full answer, but they threw this up. I'm not kidding. Like in the middle of the round one, I think. Maybe this got up before. Let me see. Hold on. I don't think we did. I think we started on the game. So like they were literally putting this up as the game was going on. So shout out to Liam and Katie for just like being focused and getting it done before we had to go to this. But yeah, super comical, super fun thing. I wish I got more pictures of that, but I didn't. But yeah, so I'm gonna try and turn this on real quick.
Draw disparity loomed large there in this mirror match. But you have your first winner of round one here. Players now taking a look at their decks, shaking hands, and yeah, an excellent match to start out the day here, Katie.
Absolutely. And, I know that sometimes people will say, mirror matches aren't interesting. I find mirror
So
matches fantastic
this
because you're playing your
was
opponent, but you're also
like
playing your
these
opponent in your head.
moments in
I
between
think that that's one of
games
the psychological things is because
and
you're
interviews
simultaneously saying, I know
were
what's in my
basically
deck.
the only time that I
I don't think at
wasn't
this point
watching
he
the stream.
knows exactly what's in Anthony's deck. So they're kind of
This
playing both
is
sides at the
like
same
the
time.
point
They're
where
kind
like
of
the
saying,
casters are
okay,
riffing
you
about
have
the
now that
event.
Diablo and
They're
Ursula is a great
discussing like
way,
what had happened in the
that
match and
dragon
things like
to
that.
get a
And
sneak peek
I'm
into the future.
basically getting
But
the
either
winning
way, it
player
was
of the
a good
rounds
way to
set
start the
up for
day. And
interview.
the thing is, Luke,
But
this is
what's so
I
difficult about this, and
I
you're
don't
gonna
think
see it
Luke
here. I
loses
don't
it. I
actually
fully
know how
believe
long
you're
this
gonna
goes because
lose in the
each
first
round was a little
round, and then
different.
you get to
So
climb
we'll
back
we'll
up.
speed up
I
ahead a
don't
little
think
bit.
most pro
Let's see.
players agree with my theory on that, but that's
Okay.
mine. Is
So we'll skip ahead a little bit here.
Nunez, Logan
And
Taylor, which is a Maelstrom player, Melissa Elger, which is
hello,
another
hello.
Rhythm Mountain, Joshua Satterfield, which is from the Backseat Genius, and then Justin Shaft, and lastly,
Let me know if you guys can hear
there's
this
Lucas
okay, just so I
Nebraska.
know.
We got Skylar Davis.
Um,
So those are the bounty players.
but
Everybody's going to be fighting
so
up. I
this
don't know if I
this
can handle
whole
being a bounty player. I
transition
already am anxious enough, but
was
that is.
the
We'll
most
get more
difficult
information
part
on what
of the entire
exactly.
show.
How many packs do you get?
Going from
But
commentator
we'll be
to
cutting to an
interviewer
interview at
was
any
just
moment. So
like
if you see us disappear, that is
an
because
experience. It
we
took
are set
forever
up
to
with
actually
our
get
host with the most,
correct,
Dan
and it was
from
very
Rhythm Mountain,
difficult.
will
But
come in
I didn't
and
get to
tell
see
us
any of
all
these yet,
about
so this is the
what's
first
going
time
to
I'm
be a
watching
very
them.
exciting day. So possibly.
How are you doing, Anthony King?
Doing pretty good. Starting
Okay.
off strong, so
Yeah.
Okay, that's very loud. That's very loud. Um. All right, so to explain this, right, to what happened here. So they're in a room that is probably, I don't know, like 100 feet from this shot here. We had not tested the audio for this at all. So we had not we had not had the ability yet on Friday to know what this is going to sound like. We had literally no clue. We didn't have honestly a good way to do this. Even by the time we got done Sunday, there was no like true solution to this to this moment here because it relied on like several different cues and everyone to be paying attention. So that was very difficult. But yeah, so these are the things that like the volume levels varied from low to high. So again, I have not listened to all these back yet. I have not. This is kind of like port, but I really just wanted to like talk about why some of that was and like that transition. This was, I think it might have been the first time we did it, but I'll turn it back. Let's go back real quick. Um,
I don't know if I can handle being a bounty player. I already am anxious enough, but that is, and we'll get more information on what exactly how many packs do you get. But we think we'll be cutting to an interview at any moment. So if you see us disappear, that is because we are set up with our host with the most, Dan of the Forbidden Mountain.
I love the
in
pipe drop. He
and
just
tell
drops
us
it. Like,
all
"Ooh,
about
there goes
this
Liam."
wonderful and exciting day. So,
So yeah. So like that transition here,
possibly.
and then like back
What are you
to
doing,
them,
Anthony King?
and then the flip. Like I think that was really just because we didn't test it. And that's just like a lesson learned thing, which is fine. Obviously, I'm not even gonna play the interview. The volume is, I can already tell it's a huge difference in volume. But I really just wanted to be like, okay, like that's what ended up happening, and that's why it was so difficult. But yeah, it was fun. It was just a fun experience. I felt like Friday, like the reason why we had to stream Friday was because the truth was that the production was all meant to be for Saturday, and was like, hey, we want to make sure we kill Saturday, we want to make sure we do everything right. So obviously, gradually through the weekend, these all got better. I have not gone back and listened to all the sounds yet, so I'm not really sure. I'm also sure that like Erin came in, she did some interviews, she might have been different sounding and things like that. So, I think there's lots to be learned there, but it was fun. So I just wanted to hear it and see it because I hadn't looked at it yet, and I wanted to tell you guys the fun story really about how sometimes you just have to figure stuff out. But yeah, so for me this past weekend, I had the absolute privilege to being the host. The host of the event, and I think a lot of people didn't really know what that meant. And even when I was originally asked to do it, I wasn't necessarily certain what it would mean either. But what it ended up being was that I was the creative director of the show. And what that meant was I was there to make sure everyone was doing their job, make sure everyone was moving, things were getting fixed. If there was a mess up in the overlay, we had to make sure that getting fixed. I was there to set the tone for all the commentators and the casting schedule. I was the one that selected all the feature matches. I was the one that had to monitor the tournament, make sure, we were not getting too many repeats on screen, make sure that we were telling the story of the bounty hunters. When the idea of bounty hunters were brought to PPG and like the concept of like, hey, this is what it could be, and then understanding like how do we pick those players. I think when we first did it, we went out and I think there was like 20 different players that I had asked and I had reached out to, and I think like 12 of them said they would do it and said yes. And then I gave that list to PPG approved the 8 that we got, and it was much more difficult this time around because this is, in a lot of ways, this Pro Play Summit is the beginning of the story of PPG again. And I think that a lot of people don't know the history of Pro Play Games, but in this interview, actually, that like the first interview here with Anthony King, he won the first stream Disney Lorcana tournament. Like the first stream Disney Lorcana tournament was PPG Denver, which ironically we're going back to next month. But he that was an event that was streamed that I remote casted. So you're talking about in 2023, like September of 2023, Pro Play Games has been streaming Disney Lorcana since then. Like, yes, they did this, and then they did PPG Miami, which was a 240 player tournament in October of 2023. And then they got Disney Lorcana challenges. So they no longer could, stream these events on their channel. They moved up. They were asked to do Disney Lorcana challenges. So Pro Play Games has been a part of the Disney Lorcana family, pretty much before anyone, in all honesty. Like they were one of the first tournament organizers to latch onto this game, so much to the point of literally streaming it 3 weeks after it came out. And it was only a 40-person tournament, but like nobody else was doing that. Nobody else was taking that type of jump on the game. And then even now for Pro Play Summit, they announced this tournament series. There's a video on the channel on YouTube. If you want to watch it, it's there, it exists. And it's me, George, and Steve. And I'm just drilling down, asking them all these questions because this is their way to still be a part of this community and give back to this community, right? So the idea that they came out the door and they're like, hey, we're gonna announce 3 of these tournaments, right? So we have Texas that just passed. We have Denver coming up on September 10th to the 12th. And then PPG Orlando is December 12th to the 14th. They committed to 3 dates, basically in May, that they're like, no, these are 3 tournaments that we're going to do. We're going to be out there and we're going to have the same prize structure, if not bigger, for each one. And on top of that, they're like, we're going to do this leaderboard. So they came out and they started doing something that no one else was doing. They announced this again in May. Like, this has been out since May. This isn't something that Jay just decided. Like, the pro ranking page has been on there since the beginning of June when they first started doing these tournaments. So this is a tournament organizer that has been committed to the game since virtually day one. And now they did our season 1 of DLCs, and now they're back and saying, hey, we're going to do our own thing and just give the community something else to play in. Obviously, next year, we already know in 2026, as of this moment, we only have 2 DLCs in North America. They're, one's on the East Coast, the other one's on the Midwest. And now you're going to have Pro Play Games still kind of competing and saying like, hey, we're a traveling circuit. They're not in one location. They do get the travel. You do have, again, we have Denver and Orlando this year. I don't know any of the dates for 2026. I don't know where they are, but I know, like, because I follow Pro Play for so long, every year they're in like Vegas several times a year to do other events. There's a good chance that, Lorcana ends up in one of those events. So like, that's another option, like where you're talking about those West Coast fields and like things like that. Like, maybe Vegas is a hit. Like, honestly, if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube or anything like that, just comment and say like, hey, where would you like to see it? Right. Like, I think that's important too. They'll definitely take that. But the conversation I had with George and Steve at the end of the weekend, we were talking about Denver, and I don't remember exactly where this poll came from. I don't remember if it was a PPG poll. I don't remember if it was a Disney Lorcana poll. But when people like it went out like saying, hey, where would you like to see a Disney Lorcana challenge? And the number 1 voted for thing was Denver. So, like, putting a Pro Play Summit in Denver is basically just, again, right into the community. Like, it's like literally in the community of saying like, hey, here is Denver. When Lorcana started, George, there. So yeah, I forgot where this was, but he did tell me that Denver was the most popular choice for a Disney Lorcana tournament. So like, that's how long that goes back of the history of Pro Play Games. Like, they are always tracking that information. They're always trying to get better and like give the community back things. So when it comes to them and these events, 400 players for the first one is great. I hope that it's, 500 players for Denver. I really do. I hope it only continues to grow. But yeah, I think that that's like why I started the stream today with this cue of like, hey, like, what did you hate about Pro Play Summit? Because anything that we can get feedback on, that I can give to them and that they can learn from, and they can just grow with and make the next one better. Like, that's all they really want. Like, they're doing these, for the community themselves. They're doing this so the community has other tournaments to play in. We now know, with the release schedule of season 2 of DLCs, as of this moment, between what we assume January to August, September, we're only going to have 2 DLCs. That's a lot of time for other events. And I'm not, and listen, we already know that like CCS is doing their tournament showcase now, but that's only in Stone Mountain, Georgia. So like, you got to know that like, hey, every time I want to go to CCS, it's a trip to Stone Mountain, Georgia. SSG, kind of the same thing, but they're only in Margate, Florida, right? Like, so if you're doing that and you're hoping for that, like, you're flying to these events unless you live locally. Whereas Pro Play is a moving tour. They are, they're definitely trying to hit different areas of the US and trying to figure those things out. I don't expect Pro Play to go to Canada, sadly. I don't think that they do. I don't think that they will. I know it definitely is more difficult for them to go all the way to the West Coast. It's just expensive. It just adds more pricing onto everything because they have to fly their whole staff there. They have to house their whole staff there. And like, the further you go, the more expensive it gets on plane tickets, things like that. But when you look at Denver, like, Denver is mountain time. It's, it's definitely on the other side of the nation for sure. And like I said, I know Vegas is a stop that they make several times a year. They just, before my first meeting with them about Texas, they were coming back from like a Vegas trip, like a Vegas Game Expo or something like that. So it's definitely one of those things where they're looking at locations now that the DLC schedule is out. They can make the plans. They, you know, by the time we get to Pro Play Denver, we might be announcing the first one of 2026. Like that's totally possible. So I would be looking out for those things. If you're not following Pro Play Games on socials, like you should be, like the information goes out there first. Obviously, the Forbidden Mountain, we're gonna like retweet, repost all those things as quickly as we see them. And maybe we'll have, you know, maybe we'll do another interview with Steve or something like that, and like maybe discuss some of the things moving forward. So again, like if you're watching this after fact or you're even watching now, like hit up in the comments, let it be known, like these are the things that you didn't like about it. These are things you'd like to see differently. For me, the cool thing about Denver is that, so this one for Texas, we had a 3v3 tournament on Sunday, but for Denver, they're having a Fabled Sealed tournament on Sunday. So, you know, obviously show up Friday. Yeah, I think it's just going to be core constructed. I did not look at the page. I can go look now, I guess. I don't think they're touching Infinity yet. I don't think that that's on the on there, but I'll double check. Let's see. I'll bring it up. We'll look together. I'll drop this here too. Because like, tickets are already on sale for this also. So Pro Play Denver. If you're into other games, like you're trying to check out Gundam, like, hey man, they have Gundam going on, and I know Gundam's like a brand new game. So Friday is currently is a 5K, but I assume again this will be potentially increased to a 10K if they get the right attendees. It looks like I can't actually click this. Interesting. I might have to go to Eventbrite then. But yeah, okay. So, whoa. Oh, okay. So this event is capped at 128 players, which is a little more tough. But you know, 128 players, 7 rounds, sealed best of 3, and then it is limited, right? I think that again, this is just gonna be Swiss. There is no top cut, but you know, you're gonna get your 6 packs. You're gonna build your deck. You're gonna play 7 rounds of Swiss, and then there'll be prizes based on that. It looks like I can't see any of this stuff yet, so I don't know if this is by design or not. I'll have to actually probably reach out to them and be like, hey, how do I actually get tickets for this? Because we don't know. But you can see that these are currently capped at 512 players. You know, this weekend, I think the main event had 452 registered players, with some drop-offs and things like that. But, you know, it's possible that this is an event that does sell out. Like, it's not improbable for it to happen. So it's definitely like one of those, like, hey, if you're going to go, it always helps to plan and buy your ticket. So I would definitely, you know, I would do that. I think that it's on Eventbrite. I don't know. I remember before on the other one, you were to come here and click this, and then they would just like pop me to the page, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. But yeah, so it does look like Friday is constructed. All right, so this see, it's kind of funny. This should say core constructed probably. So that's another thing that I can reach out to them and be like, hey, you should probably just edit this just in case there's no confusion that this is going to be core constructed and not infinity constructed, because now that we have 2 formats, you got to be specific, right? You know, that's where I'm at. But yeah. So all in all, this is a fun weekend, if I'm being honest. I got there about 3 p.m. on Thursday. I met the 20 lore guys before this weekend. I had only met Wes in person, and it was for a very brief period of time at CCS. Like, he was very busy at CCS, which I totally understand. So I only talked to him a little bit. I've talked to him like on Discord here and there, but I never like really had a long string conversation with him. And then I got to meet Zach and Austin and Sasuke. Like, Sasuke is kind of the same thing. Like, I've interacted with him a bit on the ICL and things like that, but I've never had like a real conversation with him. Austin I had just met, and then Zach I had just met as well. And they were awesome. Honestly, those guys were great. They were very adamant about getting everything correct as quickly as possible. Very, very professional in the sense of like when there was a mistake, how do we fix this mistake? Like how do we get better? Each day definitely got better. Each day I think we communicated with each other better. And it's like one of those where you have to grow, you have to learn. And I think that everyone's kind of in the position to where you're learning about things. So at the end of the day, like it might have been a rough start, which was probably as expected for all involved, as as everyone was trying to figure out like what their role was in the tournament and like what their role was in production. But all in all, I have nothing but flowers to give out to them. Also, Lofi came, I believe, on Saturday morning. He was there, so I think he got there Friday night. So Loaf ended up meeting up Lofi again. I've interacted with him on Discord a bunch in the ICL and things like that, but never in person. So got to meet Lofi as well. And the crew, like they really did. I think they absolutely did everything they possible to make sure the stream was flowing, make sure it was working. If there was any incidents, they were trying to fix them as quickly as possible. And it was great. Honestly, the conversations at the end of the weekend were phenomenal. I got to talk to Wes a lot this weekend, and it was a lot of fun just kind of like talking about the growth of the game in general and the growth of their brand and our brand and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. Huge shout out to those guys that killed it. I actually received a pretty cool present from them. I think if I do that, you can't hear me. So I'll just go like this. And I got a couple presents this weekend, but this one's a pretty cool one. So normally, Lore 20 does the playmats for their events. So they weren't sure going into the event if they were going to have the playmats, which I'll show what ended up happening, but they were nice. Wes gave me the playmat that they had made for this weekend, which was this lamp little artist thing. This is really cool. And the other thing that was really sweet about this weekend was that they actually had their booth there at Denver, and they had the artist there. So the artist was actually there sketching stuff out, signing people's playmats that were buying like from the older designs and things like that. So that was really cool for Lord 20 to have like their own little booth, kind of a way for like their artists to get things signed, sketch some stuff out, have some fun. So that was like really cool. Actually, I didn't even really know about that until like midday Friday. I just had no clue. But what ProPlay ended up doing the bounty hunter thing. And this is definitely something that as we get further into the season, I really would love to know how people feel about it, because I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of unique. But this was the playmat that the bounty hunters ended up using. It's also the playmat that was on stream all weekend. And what's cool about this is that they were actually numbered. So like this one was number 31 of 50, I think. Yeah, so this was like 31 of 50. And this was David Nunez's playmat for the weekend. He ended up going 6-3 on the weekend. And I was supposed to get one of these, but it was accidentally used and given away, so I did not get one. So Nunez was nice enough to give me his. I actually think there's a world where people are interested. I might actually do like a giveaway for this on social media. So we might just end up giving this away on social media or something like that, because I think it'd be cool. Like, hey, maybe I can just give this to people and someone can enjoy it. I like it a bunch. I would use it for my own gameplay station over here. But if like people are really interested, there was only 50 of them that were given out, which is cool. I think the top 8. Well, yeah, I think the top 8 were listed as 1 through 8. I don't remember specifically. I don't know if they actually gave them out at random or not, but who knows. But the reason why Nunez was so quick to just like give it away was because we got one of the coolest gifts ever. I am so excited. If you guys don't know Matified, right? If you don't know about Matified, you're probably living like literally under a rock or something like that. And we're gonna shout them out real quick because they're completely awesome. And they were very, very nice and gave us a very sweet gift this past weekend. And I gotta promote them here because it's just, it's too insane. So yeah, so here's Matified.com. And this weekend we met up with Craig, and Craig gave us 5 of these wonderful gifts. So this is the official Forbidden Mountain mattified playmat. And you can see that it's foily, it's shiny, and it is just beautiful. I am absolutely in love with this thing. I can't wait to go to set championships and play with this thing. I'm so very excited. And I just can't shout out Craig enough. It was so nice that he gave these to us. And I'm very, very happy. I love everything he does. I'm always, reposting him on X and things like that. And I just all but the success for him. He's doing some really, really cool stuff over there now. It was awesome playing on it this week. And yeah, like Orion picked one up. But yeah, the reason why Nunez didn't care about giving me his pro play mat was because he's like, yeah, I'm just going to play on this like Forbidden Mat mount like for literally ever. So, huge shout out to him for giving me that. The other thing that I got this weekend as a gift, shout out to Enchanted Shatter. They were friends all weekend. We did multiple, but I got this bracelet, and this bracelet says Shifty. I actually chose this bracelet to say Shifty. Listen, when I played Disney Lorcana, I like shift characters, so we just went with it. I thought it was funny though that they were like afraid to give me one because they thought I wasn't gonna wear it, and then I literally wore it the whole weekend, and I was like, I can't believe you aren't gonna give me one of these. But yeah, Bree and Courtney were awesome. I did interview them on Friday, so they were on the stream. They did chat about the community and stuff like that. They're kind of local. We went out to dinner with them Saturday night, I believe, to this like buffet, like upscale pizza place. It was really cool. I don't remember the names of any of the restaurants except for the barbecue ones. We had Heart 8, which was good. We had I forget. I'll be honest. I was tired, and most of the times the only one I chose was Heart 8, and that was on Thursday night before the show, was because we had Heart 8 last year and it was so delicious. But everywhere we ate this weekend was great. So shout out to Texas for having some really, really good food, if I'm being honest. Mine said Jafar. Jafar what? I don't understand what this means. Oh, the bracelet. Okay, got you. I was confused. But yeah, I had an absolute blast. I really did. I did not have that much free time in like during the events whatsoever. And in most cases, at the end of the day, I kind of just was like, all right, I'm done. I'm gonna like go get food. Specifically on Friday, I did not eat at all on Friday until we got to dinner Friday night. So I was a bit hangry, won't lie. So I pretty much rushed out of there on Friday after we were done. Saturday, when the event went off, I was in the back for like another half hour, 45 minutes because I did all the deck lists. So all the players had their deck lists as quickly as possible because there was kind of a mess up on Friday with them. So I took the initiative on Saturday and I just made all the deck lists for PBG to send out to the players. And then on Sunday, the event ended. And then me and Dick had to go and commentate over the last several rounds, which was fine because we went back. What ended up happening was that we recorded the top 8 of Friday. So Friday cut to a top 8, but it was on Saturday morning. So they came in Saturday morning and we recorded one top 8, one top 4, and the finals. And then they wanted to use that content. So after the main event finished, like the 15K finished on Sunday, we just took a 25-minute break and then came back, and Dick and I went in and commentated a couple games from the top 8, top 4, and then the final. We recorded the whole finals matchup. So it was fun because, and we'll talk about Dick in a moment here, but I originally, when I was asked to do this, I thought that I was just going to be a commentator. I was like, okay, that's cool. I get to go and I get to cast, which, if you guys have been following, I love doing it. It's really it was kind of my day one goal was to be a commentator for this game. So anytime I'm asked to do it, whether it had been for SSG, whether it had been for Lucky Llama, I came out and did it in Minnesota for the guys out there, whenever I'm asked to do those things, it's what I love to do. It's what I want to be a part of. So when ProPlay came to me and asked me to do this creative director design, like this creative director thing. I said, okay, like maybe I can do that and still like commentate. And I realized very quickly on Friday that that was not going to be possible. There's just too many things that you have to worry about. There's too many things that you have to follow and to track. You know, your whole goal is to make sure the show is going for the audience at home, to be entertained, right? So since I couldn't cast, you know, on Friday, on Saturday, I was like a little bummed about it because obviously I really enjoyed doing it. I definitely wanted to cast with Liam. I've never had the opportunity to do that. I've cast it with Katie a few times on the ICL. She's great, love her to death. And then the only time I've ever commentated was with Dick was at some of our like local encounter events. But what we had realized and talked about after the event, and well, I'm sure we'll talk about this on Thursday night for the Into the Unknown podcast when he's back and live with us. That like scenery, that scenario for the encounter is just not ideal at all for commentating because you're just like literally in the middle of a room with all the players and the main event is like one thing over. So like, or the stream match is like one thing over and you're just talking with everybody the whole day. You're distracted. You're not really like, so the encounter is like clearly just not a good place to like hone your craft whatsoever. It's obviously it's better than nothing, but that's why I think for those encounter events moving forward, we're probably just going to have remote casters for them, or just let the players be on their own voice because I just think it's so much easier. Even for the last one, we ended up doing some commentary toward the end because people were leaving. It was a little more quiet, a little bit less distracting, and that's why you had like Rob and Braden commentate, or like me and Rob commentate. Shout out to Rob, by the way. I love Rob. You know, he finished in the finals this past weekend. Obviously, you know, former member of TFM. There was a lot of questions in chat about that. Rob is Rob. We love him. He had to go away from Disney Lorcana for a while. He's come back, and there's no hard feelings for anyone there. You know, we love Rob. With everything, we're so happy for him to be successful. But yeah, so when we decided that we were going to do the commentary of the end, I was like, you know what? I don't have to watch the show anymore. I should be able to just sit and relax. So I did get to commentate at least a couple games. What's the next event you plan on attending? I will certainly be at Pro Play Summit Denver. I'll be there. I think I'm like pretty confident that I'm going to go to the Inking Invitational, which is the weekend before Denver, down in Maryland. I'm pretty confident I'm going to go there. So that's definitely my plan. So I think I will be there and I will be playing. I think so. I don't think I will be a part of the broadcast or anything like that. So I think I'm going to go down and be playing in that tournament, which I am excited about. Pro Play Summit, probably not playing, but we'll see. I don't think so. It's definitely not the plan. But yeah, so I will definitely be there. And then the plan, I'm definitely going to try and get tickets for Bologna, try and get tickets for Milwaukee. There's maybe even a world that if I don't get into the main event of either of those tournaments, I still go to the tournament. Again, it's a video we're working on and like how you can manage and like get the most out of DLCs. And that'll be coming out soon because we think that DLCs they're pretty hard to turn down if you can go to, in all honesty. I think that they're very, very favorable if you understand the system and you know how to kind of make the most out of them. And it's definitely a piece of content. If you haven't picked up the finance guide yet on Medify, like it's something that Scott's always working on, trying to figure out like how to max EV your events and how to max EV your spendings. That's definitely something that Scott's very, very interested in. So definitely check that out as well. But yeah, we've officially finished our coffee. As we're coming in, lots of new friends in here. So we've been talking about it all day. What'd you hate about Pro Play Summit Texas? I'd love to know. If you're new and you're joining us more recently and you haven't seen this yet, please feel free, hit a comment, let us know. First of all, love Link Biscuits here. That's hilarious. Thank you. I'm glad you had a good time. Definitely important. It's the TFM crew. We had a pretty good weekend, you know. TFM Ben finished in the top 8 of the 10K. He lost in top 8 on the draw against the mirror match, which is kind of as expected. In some ways, you got to kind of get a little lucky there and hope that the player on the play like doesn't have the ideal starting hand, but that's why we play the game. And then TFM Alex finished in the top 16 of the main event and got taken down by Chernodogs in the top 16. So on the draw again, not a great matchup on the draw. Winnable, but not favorable by any means. Both playing Amber Steel. Amber Steel Songs is a deck that I think for the most part in June, since Set 8 comes out, that's been the most successful deck for TFM. TFM James had a top 4 at CCS a few weekends ago. And then Alex has been on an absolute crush. He won a 128 player tournament or something around that number in Toledo a few weeks back. He just won like another 1.5K with that. And then he came up, showed out in top 16s, the 400 player main event. So Amber Steel Song's definitely been the TFM deck, I would say, for the most part for the team. I believe, if I'm correct, Orion, Alex, Ben, and Nunez all played Amber Steel in the main event. I think Orion I know was, I think, maybe 6-3 by the end. Nunez was on the bubble in the end and lost, so he ended up finishing 6-3. Yeah, Amber Steel's definitely been the TFM deck of choice for this particular season. Melissa has been playing a little bit of everything, and she's found a home in Ruby Amethyst again. And she had, some pretty okay success with that. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough. I think right now Amber Steel's great, honestly. Maybe I need to try to steal something. Yeah. So what's really, really cool about Amber Steel right now is that even if you guys looked at the finals, and we're going to talk about it, on the meta report, of course, which will probably be out tomorrow. Most likely tomorrow morning, the meta report will be out. And maybe if I get it done today, maybe it's out tonight, whatever, but probably tomorrow morning. I think that Amber Steel is just in such a unique place right now. There's, in the top 4 of the main event, there were 3 Amber Steels, but all 3 of them were like 15 cards different, which is crazy. Like Rob brought his own strategy, which was really, really cool. And this is something I've seen Rob do now for a year. Rob played an Amber Steel deck like this one in Star City Games Richmond, last May. And it's just something that he just knows, hey, whenever I have to go back to it, this strategy still exists. It's just a matter of the positioning of the strategy. And it just turned out that yesterday was a great run for him. I think the day before he just missed top cut. I think he was in the top 32. So Rob was another player that had a really, really great weekend. Tyler obviously had an insane weekend. Tyler finished in the top 4 on Friday. So Tyler and Jordan would be the 2 examples. They each had 2 rounds of buys and then ran it back. But Tyler had top 8 or top 4, a finals win, and then his team went on to win the 3v3 tournament also. So Tyler absolutely crushed this weekend. So shout out to Tyler. I think his online name is Batsu. He crushed it. Absolutely. And then Jordan was another player that absolutely crushed it. He had the Emerald Amethyst Diablo deck that we featured a couple times on stream because he was at the top tables and we kept kind of having to get him back on screen. And he won the 10K and then top 8'd the 15K. So he had another great, a really, really good weekend. Shout out to Habibi. Habibi top 8'd it and then lost in the top 8 of the 10K. But he was one of the last players that I got to have a conversation with on Sunday. Once the event was over and once we closed the stream out, I kind of finally got to go out, see some of my friends that I really didn't get to talk to all weekend, and then meet some of the players that were there that I hadn't really spoken to. But I interviewed Habibi on Friday after his feature match, and then I talked to him on Sunday for a bit, and just kind of got a vibe for his crew, and it was 3 of them that came down from Canada. Huge shout out to anyone that's traveling like that to these events. There was a whole crew from Puerto Rico that came, which was awesome. Whole crew from Canada that came, which was awesome. That's definitely, if these events are going to appeal to that level of player, that's great. I hope they get to the extent where maybe they appeal to some of the international players. Like DKP has showed up for less, but obviously it's the weekend for Worlds and he like had just won. But I'm hoping that like, hey, maybe he comes out and hangs out with us in Texas or something like that. Like that would be cool to say DKP. Even like an Ed Chu. Ed Chu is based out of California. Denver's not too far. Maybe we get to see him for Denver. That would be really cool. There's definitely players that I expect to show up that like for the Worlds competitors. Luke was the only one. Shout out to the Wizard. He ended up commentating in the top 16 and top 8 this past weekend. And he was the only Worlds player that said, you know what, like I'm going to go. I don't want to put Bivens. We kind of put it out there a couple weeks ago. Bivens was signed up to play before Worlds, and then after Worlds ended, he decided he wasn't going to come. So hopeful that in Denver, we're going to see more of these, successful players from season 1 show up and, have their moment to kind of like participate in the pro play circuit. But hey, listen, just because you're a Worlds competitor doesn't mean, you can come in and crush a tournament. Luke had 2 very bad events, and I'm sure he'll talk about it on his own stream and things like that. But, Luke came in, I think he started 1-2 or 1-3. And then like 1-2 again, like back-to-back days. He just, Emerald Seal wasn't the deck for him this weekend. And it honestly really wasn't the deck at all. Like it had moments on stream where it looked good, but overall it did not convert very well. I think the only Emerald Steel deck in the top 16 was actually a Return to Hercules deck, which will be covered on the meta report, of course. But yeah, I think that the coolest thing for me on the weekend was calling the show. And for me, back-to-back days of Swiss, there was 18 rounds of Swiss. And on the individual days themselves, we did not have a repeat matchup. So it really kept it fresh. It kept the content fresh. It kept the commentators fresh. Because it's so difficult. Like when the metagame and, you can go and look at it on Inkdex, you can see that like Amber Steel and Ruby Sapphire, they were very dominant in the room. Obviously, it ended up being in the finals of one of the tournaments where the other tournament was quite different. 2 different discard decks were in the finals. But when that you're so top heavy in an ink combination, it's very hard to keep the matchups fresh and then like keep the casters going because you can only call like Amber Steel versus Ruby Sapphire so many times. Like it's just, you can't just be like, oh, let's have 4 rounds of that, right? Like it's not possible. So anyone that was in the room that like, for whatever reason felt that they deserved to be on camera, it's not a dig at anyone whatsoever, but I got comments and I got like messages on Discord like, oh, you should have featured this person. Like the whole point was to keep the flow of the event in a way that kept the audience at home entertained by different decks to showcase that going into set championships, all of these different decks really can be successful, to showcase that you can show up to a tournament and be successful with not necessarily the cookie cutter deck. I was very, very proud that at the end of the day, we were able to show 9 rounds of tournaments each day and not have the same matchup over and over and over and over again, right? Like, I think that was like kind of the most valuable, important thing. And there were some days that, like, I think in day 2, like I missed a deck that I would love to get on camera, but they kind of snuck into top 16. And then in top 16, the way we designed the main event was around featured players. So whenever we really could, we made sure we got a featured player on screen. The biggest thing that I messed up on the weekend was there was actually, I think it was around 6 or around 7 maybe, Skylar paired Joshua, and it could have been a bounty on bounty matchup where they're basically like playing for their career or like their tournament. Like the loser that event was going to be knocked out of top 16 contention, and the winner still had to go and play in the bubble match. So I missed that opportunity to have the featured players play each other, which really sucked. Joshua ended up, of course, winning that, and then he was the feature match the next round. It was also the reason why Justin was the feature match in the top 16, was because Justin was kind of hovering all day, but I just couldn't ever get him on camera. But once Jay Shaft made top 16, I said, like, that night we were at dinner, I'm like, yeah, no matter what, Jay Shaft is going to start the tournament because he's the feature player that made top 16 and we haven't seen him yet. So yeah, that's kind of why the design of Saturday like felt a little bit differently, because it really was, I was trying to mix in and try and get as much different things on camera, but I was also trying to showcase like, hey, these are the featured players of the event. They're still doing well. If you were following along on socials, I tried as often as possible to update people with like what the undefeated decks were, how the featured players were doing. Like there's just so many things that I was trying to do that it was like impossible to do everything perfectly. But it was fun. It really was. It was a lot of fun. You can't make everyone happy, so just don't. Oh yeah, it's not about what makes me happy, right? Like it's more just like, hey, I'm 100% trying to just put on a show that's like not the same matchup every round. And I was very, very proud at the end of the day that we were able to be successful in that. I also, like I saw my favorite comments of the weekend were like people were very upset that X1s were on screen. And like in most cases in the tournament, X1s are still very live for the tournament. Like in most cases, the X1 matchup in like a round 5 or round 6 is far more exciting than the undefeated matchup, And the other thing is like it's specifically if it's a deck that you're trying to feature, it's a deck that you just want to say like, hey, I want to get this on camera one time. You have to kind of shoot your shot in that round, because if that they do lose, then you're never going to see that. Like then like you're never going to have the opportunity to see a unique deck list on TV, like on screen, right? So putting the X1s up, like you have to understand in that moment, they are very much fighting for their life in the tournament, right? That's why if I had noticed Josh versus Skylar a little bit faster, I might have called an audible to put them on screen, because the idea that the two featured players were playing each other as bounty hunters basically for the tournament life would have been way better storytelling than likely whatever matchup that was on that, because I think I put the undefeated matchup on that time. So yeah, it's cool to see the undefeated players go on at 6-0. At 6-0 is nice like that, but there's still an opportunity that through the rest of the tournament, you're going to see that player and feature that player, unlike the players that are being eliminated from the tournament in the X1 bracket to go to X2. So I don't really understand this like hatred for putting X1s on. I actually just don't get it. I think that it's a perfect opportunity for everyone still in the tournament to still make top cut. And it gives a little bit more legs and a little bit more agency to the game, because those players are now like under another level of stress, because they're like, man, like not only am I on camera, but if like, I'm on camera, I lose, I'm also out of the tournament. So I don't know. I thought it was very interesting. That was some of the comments that I thought were very, very funny to me. But yeah, all in all, I had a blast. I met so many people. I interviewed, I don't even know how many people I ended up interviewing. I think it was over 20, which is definitely the most interviews I've ever done in a weekend. So that was really fun. And everyone was great. I don't want to say her name, but shout out to B. She was very, cautious about getting on stream, about the interview. And I totally understood that. And I said, like, if you don't want to do it, you do not have to do it. But she still had the courage to go and do it. And I think that the biggest takeaway from me to any player that's like that, because there were some players that declined stream, and I understand why in a lot of ways, but there is a but here. If you never do it and then you're put in a position to where you have to and it's not a choice, going to events like this and being put on camera, it means that it's not your first time. Like you get to go, you get to do it, and you get that experience, right? And when you get like after you've done it, you're like, all right, I've done it. Like now I've gotten through it. It's not my first time. Like we've moved past it, and now the next time it happens, you'll be better for it. So I think that it's very difficult, and I know there's a lot of new players in Disney Lorcana, and I totally respect that. But yes, like having the ability to be featured and get your chance to get out there and get that rep in and just like get through that first time, it makes every other time easier. Like, and that's like where I'm at. So I'm very happy that B did go play on stream and that she did come and get interviewed, because now it'll be a little bit easier for her moving forward, hopefully. Yeah, she did. Yeah, she won. And then, after the match had ended, we had asked her like, hey, do you want to do an interview? And she was hesitant. She's like, I don't really know. And that's when we walked over to the interview section. I said to her, I was like, do you want me to call your name? And I told her, hey, you guys were in chat and you were hyping her. You were hyping her up in chat. I was like, chat was excited to see you. So it's okay. Like if you want your name, we'll say your name. If not, we'll go with B. Not a big deal. And I had a lot of conversations like that before, like before any of those interviews. Like Justin, for an example, you know, his name seemed to confuse people, and I asked him, I was like, hey, like, what do you want me to call you? Like, you tell me, and I will call you by what you tell me. And I try to do that as often as possible throughout the weekend, because it's important that if you're up there and you're, you know, you're vulnerable in that moment and you want people to know you for you. And if the whole goal of the weekend was to put a face to some of these players that, you know, if I'm going to take a con to DLCs, I feel like Disney Lorcana challenges were not successful in this. I feel like the people that were made in the Disney Lorcana challenges were mostly already made individuals. Like I look at Edmund Chu. Like Edmund Chu, yes, he won a DLC, he won NACC, he was a finalist at Worlds, but like he also won a CCS. And you know, he was a pretty prominent player on the West Coast. Everyone knew about Edmund Chu before the DLC season started. Zan Syed, he won a CCS. Like, you know, like he was a rookie of the year in Magic. Like he had a following. DKP, very known player from another game, comes in, takes a tear, travels the world. He has a huge following to begin with, like, you know. And when you look at the Disney Lorcana, and I start telling you, like, hey guys, does anyone remember, like, I don't know, like who the runner-up was in Atlanta or like Chicago or like, you know, Fort Worth? Like these players that had incredible events, you know, like credible runs on the official tournament circuit, we don't know their names because Disney Lorcana did not do a good job at all of promoting their own player base. For me, as a creative director of the event, the whole point of it was to put these players out there. Even the entire design of the featured players were to give you players that are successful in the game, like over and over again, right? Okay, that's a fair comment, Black Magician. Super fair comment. Well, I'll bring it up in a second. But the whole purpose of like, hey, this is the community of pro players in this circuit, and we want them to go home and for you to remember them, right? Like we want you to go take away from the weekend players like Tyler that most have never heard of, players like Jordan. He's a top 16 to DLC. I actually don't know if Tyler topped anything. I literally don't know, which is like not a dig at him. It's a dig at the concept that even as someone that does such a great job of following players, I've never met Tyler before. I did not know Tyler before this event. Jordan, top 16 Fort Worth last year. But aside from that, I don't know him, right? There a lot of the players that I met this weekend, I didn't necessarily know that well, or maybe only heard of them like maybe one time and like it fell off. So hopefully the story of this weekend and the feature going into the next one is understanding that like these players came to play, they were so very successful, and now there's more players in the community that you can know like, okay, these are some of the best players in Disney Lorcana. That is absolutely the goal for this circuit, without a tenfold. So I hope, if anything, we delivered on that promise. That's what I hope for. I really hope that we get to Denver and Jordan is there. We get to Denver and Tyler is there. And these are players that come back. Rob Serpay is another one. Like Rob Serpay he won like 3 Star City Games events that were 100+ players. And he in the DLC season in the 2-game format, you know, that wonderful thing that like the 2-game format, he day 2'd 1 DLC. But like this is a player that won 128 player tournament, 175 player tournament. Like he won some really large Disney Lorcana tournaments on the third party scene and didn't translate to the 2-game format. And then he comes out and in one of the first big tournaments that he's participated in, he won like a 80, or he was the finals player in a 90 player 5K a couple weekends ago. And then like this weekend, it's a 400+ player tournament and he's in the finals. Like again, so that's what I'm trying to convey. I'm trying to convey that the purpose of this is that we don't have handcuffs on. We're allowed to push players. We're allowed to push teams. I was so excited that every single time we got to the interview and I said, look at this guy in his jersey. This is awesome. Tell me about your team. Tell the audience about your team. Shout out your friends. Shout out the local game stores. Like the whole purpose of Pro Play Summit is that we have the ability to promote players, promote communities, promote teams. Like, I think it's so very important. And that's like my definitely my bigger team. Look, yeah, so exactly. For sure. Like, of the featured players, every one of them, except Zenulus and Melissa were the only two that did not day two a DLC, but have had success in their own. They have a pretty great resume. But Nunez, David Nunez is the only one that was a gold Mickey winner. Like, people forget that David Nunez was a gold Mickey winner. Like, if I wasn't telling you guys all the time how awesome David Nunez is, most of the community, they don't know who David Nunez is. They don't know him. But like, he was literally the runner-up in DLC Toronto. So yeah, I will say this was a comment that we can totally bring. You're not right. He was a cheating scum. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But yeah, Jordan Moore, right, was Chicago. But again, like, these are things that the running joke, well, not really a joke, but the comment that Nunez often makes is that, like, yeah, he was the runner-up of DLC, but Diego's face was on social media. So everyone remembers Diego. Everyone remembers Luke, remembers Zan and Ed and, Federico and things like that. Like, all of these players that won. Also, I saw that Gary mentioned Frank Carson winning Lille. Like, yeah, like, a lot of the players for us that won tournaments were established in the game well before DLCs. And I'd argue, like, as an example, like Josh, Josh won Atlanta, and I think that there's a lot of people that don't even know who Josh is. Like, if they saw Josh in a room in a DLC, they would not know that guy won a DLC, because I don't think Disney Lorcana did a very good job of promoting their player base. And that is, like, for me, the one big takeaway is that if anything is going to get accomplished in the Pro Play Summits, like in those events, is that we are going to promote the player base. We are going to promote the teams and the local game stores that help players get to these teams. A lot of the people I talk to very much were like, yeah, like, this local store sponsors us. They helped us get here. Like, that's the stories that we want to tell, because it's important for the world to know, like, it really is, like, it's so community driven. It's crazy, in all honesty. So, but yeah, I hope that at the very least is the story that was conveyed this weekend, that we did get away from that. As I'm getting ready, I have to take my kids to the doctors a little bit shortly from now. I already gave 20 Lore their flowers. They were awesome to work with. Again, this is my first time working with 20 Lore Pro. I had met them at CCS when I went in December, but it was like a very brief conversation because they were busy. And again, I get it. I've interacted with Wes a few times on Discord and things like that, but nothing crazy. So working with them was awesome. They really did. They just, at every little bump in the road, they were all right. Like, how do we get past this as quickly as possible? How do we fix this and make it work? I think they were perfect. They really brought professionalism to this event, and it helped. It made it look all the more better. To the commentators, like Liam. Yeah, what can I say more about Liam? 5 DLCs, NACC Worlds. He's a professional by nature. What I loved about Liam, and this was the kind of the conversations that we had, and he had started this technically for Worlds, but like, even without I did not know about like his Worlds booklet until he made a picture of it on thing. But it was something that we had already discussed leading up to the event, of just like, how do we get more out of this player base? How do we get more out of these players on stream? How do we get more out of these featured players? So I designed on Saturday morning before the main event that, like, hey, at 9:30, I need all the featured players here, because I'm going to let Liam, Katie, and Dick just literally ask you guys any questions. Like, the goal was to try and get at least one piece of segment of the day out of each featured player. That did not end up happening. Not everyone did get featured. As an example, David Nunez ended up not getting featured. Aaron Rubin ended up not getting featured. Melissa was on day 1, but not day 2. So, we didn't have the opportunity to get everybody featured, which was unfortunate, but that's just kind of how the day rolls sometimes. But the purpose of it was like when they got featured, what did they want the audience to know? And, Liam walked around to everybody, had conversations. Whenever I told him, like, hey, like, you're going to come off break, here's your feature match player, he might have even gone out, kind of asked the question to the feature players real quick before he had to be in the room and things like that. Like, he just brings that analytical sense of humanizing people and just giving you more to know and more to care about. And I think that is invaluable. I wish that more of us did it. And I think that it's very, very important moving forward with that angle of understanding like what the story we're trying to tell about the players in these events, that it's something like that that's just going to make them so much better. Katie, I said it at the end of the weekend. I met Katie literally 1 year prior at DLC Fort Worth. And at that time, I had like, I known of her. I knew like not that much about her. She was kind of like, I think a little bit newer to the content scene and things like that. But I had known her. We had met. We had talked. She was fun. Throughout the year, I've worked with her a bunch on different things. Obviously, she was one of the first people in the Morning Climb. We did that whole segment on mental health and things like that. I have watched Katie grow a ton, and I don't know how many people you could say have worked harder than her to do that. And to have the ability to give her an audience of the size that we did this weekend to perform, put on her show, and showcase her talents, I'm so proud of her. I'm so happy that she was able to do that. And I really hope that she's proud of herself, because I know she's, we all are. We're all of our own biggest critics. And it was awesome. Like, it was really awesome to see her have the platform and have the ability to kind of like just go out there and showcase to the globe. In all honesty, by the end of the day on Friday, there were over 1,000 viewers on Twitch and things like that. So having that much reach, having her call the finals was very important to me. A lot of the design days were to give everyone the opportunity to close the show. So everyone had that same opportunity to start the show and close the show. Like, that was by design, again, by me trying to tell the stories and trying to give every one of these people in a position of the production crew to be successful. And then, love you, Katie. I really hope you had a blast. I'm really glad you were able to do it. And of course, I mean, Dick Burns. Whoo, man. I think if we had announced, right? Because we were supposed to have commentary cards, right? Like, how like we had the feature player cards, and then they made one for me also as the game host. We were supposed to have commentator cards. So we were supposed to be able to get those, and then they were going to share them. PPG was going to share them. We didn't get them, which was very sad. I kind of wish we did, because everyone that found out that Dick Burns was going to commentate this event, they were upset. They didn't think he was going to be good. They were mad. They thought that he was going to be bad for the brand. They thought he wasn't going to deliver. And man, can I say that I am so excited by the idea that Dick Burns, I'm going to be honest, I think he stole the show. Nothing against Liam, nothing against Katie, but I think Dick did an absolutely outstanding job, over the moon, better than anyone would have given him credit for Friday morning. 100%. I think he did that well. I am so excited to talk about it with him on Thursday night. And I just think that literally the small group of people that did know that Dick was doing it, nobody. And I don't mean, there wasn't any one of them that thought, oh man, like Dick's going to crush it. So the idea that he was able to go out there and just absolutely knock it out of the park, huge congrats to him. In a big way, thank you, because you made me look like $1 million, and I appreciate that, as always. But yeah, huge. Obviously, our tale will never end in this game, but it really was cool at the end of the night. At the end of the day, when we got to commentate those last couple of matches together, Dick was already in his groove. Like he'd already been doing it for 3 straight days at that time. I had to come into the booth completely dry, right? Like I had not cast it really. I did a warm up last week on the ICL. Shout out to Wonderland. He kind of let me get in there and do that because I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to end up commentating or not this weekend. But I really wanted to get a couple reps in just because I've been a little bit rusty. And Luke was very nice. He let me come in and do 2 rounds of the ICL. That was super awesome. And when I got into the booth, oh, thank you so much, Earl Meister, for the raid there. I do appreciate it. You are the best. We're kind of just summarizing and talking about the ending and throwing some flowers at some players right now from, well, actually just some, people from, that were a part of the wonderful Pro Play Summit this weekend. And again, shout out to, thank you so much. You were the best, Earl Meister. I do appreciate that, my dear friend. I hope your stream was awesome. We've been kind of here chatting for those coming in about Pro Play Summit Texas this past weekend. It was a lot of fun. I had an absolute smash of a time. It was easily one of the more difficult things I've had to do because I had never done it before. But I was up to the task, and I was really, really tough. But yeah, so for me to get into the booth at the end of the day after a very long weekend of like not commentating, and Dick was just like right in stride, I felt like I was able to come into the room and we were smooth sailing. Like I didn't have to like think too much. He was already on cue. We were already in sync. And, for Dick and I, like, yeah, we have a rapport and everything like that, which is great. But the only time we've ever really casted before was in that encounter room. And like, if you guys have seen pictures of the encounters and you showed up to those events, like it is, I said at the beginning, like it's not ideal whatsoever to be commentating in this room because you're just smack dab in the room with like 40 other people and anyone can walk over to you, ask you a question, talk to you and things like that. Specifically when I'm judging the events in most cases also, right? So like it's just not a room to really be productive in when you're trying to hone your craft. And for us at that time, that's the only time we've ever had the ability to do that. So at the end of the day, to get in the booth with Dick after a long weekend of I watched every game, right? Like I watched every single game. I listened to every game. I was there. I was monitoring everything that was on chat, making sure that everything was going correct. But being in there and like having the ability to cast with him for a few games and a few matches was just like, yep, this was great. Like I knew that he was going to kill it, and he did. I basically had told everyone to that point, like I would never put someone that I trust and love in a position to fail. So like if I genuinely did not think that he was going to be good or that he could do it, I would not have even put him in a position to do it. But as the weeks were leading up to it, as we were trying to figure out who the commentators were going to be and how we were going to land on them, Dick was very interested. I knew he was very interested. I don't want to get into too much detail about like how we got to where we got to in Texas and how everyone got their roles. But like it got to a point where we were not sure if Dick was going to be a part of the show or a player. And as we got a little closer, we did figure out like, okay, like you are going to be able to be a commentator. So for him to get the opportunity to be approved by PPG, for me to kind of like vouch for him and push for him, and then for him to go out and just steal the show, I'm just so very happy for him, so very excited for him because like he loves this game, he loves this community, he loves being a part of it, and having that opportunity, as we were talking about it a little bit beforehand. And like the first time I asked him, like, hey, like, would you want to do this? Like, would you want to be a commentator? The comment Dick made to me, he's like, well, if like I play in the tournament, I might get one feature match. But if I'm commentating the tournament, I get every feature match. And it's just so true. It's all about maximizing your minutes, right? And I said this to Kurt Spice from World Class Cards. He didn't do very well at Worlds, right? But every single time he was on screen, he was memorable. To me, aside from DKP winning the tournament, aside from Ed having an incredible run at the tournament, right? Like the person to come out of that event with the most overhead was Kurt Spice. Like he absolutely captured the audience in everything he did, whether it was the drawing, whether it was his interview, like whatever it was. I felt that Kurt was the biggest winner that wasn't a winner at Worlds. So that's how I feel about Dick. I feel like Dick really came out and just absolutely crushed it. I'm so very excited for him. I cannot wait. Thursday night, probably around 8:30 p.m. right back here, Twitch, YouTube, all that things, Facebook. We'll be live on all of them. I'll be with Dick. Hopefully we'll have some members of the weekend. I'm going to try and reach out to some of the winners, some of the players that like I got to meet this weekend, see if they want to come hang out with us and talk about their, their structure and everything like that. So, but in the end, Pro Play Summit was so much fun. I said it in my post, like it was not a job that I sought out. Like it was not something that I ever wanted to do. But when I was asked to do it, I said, yeah, I think I can do that. And, listen, nothing is perfect. It's just like perfect is the enemy of good enough, to quote Mr. David Nunes. But yeah, overall, I was very, very happy and proud of this weekend. I think that everyone brought their A game, from production to the commentators. We were consistently just trying to put on a show for everyone at home. And, for the judging staff there, I have to give a big shout out to my judge, Matthew. He was phenomenal all weekend. We worked together, making sure we had the feature matches that we wanted. We had one hiccup in round 2, and then like another hiccup in round 3 of Friday. But after we got past those hiccups and everyone understood what was going on, it was just smooth sailing from there. I did not have any more issues whatsoever. And that was a huge attribute to Matthew for sure. He was so great. And in general, again, the judging staffing, I think for the main event and for Friday, maybe there were some issues with 3v3 because of lack of judging and things like that. But huge shout out to that crew. I think they did phenomenal this weekend. The pacing of the tournament all weekend was phenomenal. We're talking, again, 9 rounds done by 7 p.m. Started at 9 a.m., started at 10 a.m., done by 7 p.m. each of those days. That to me is the biggest takeaway for sure. We look at CCS as an example, and they're hosting kind of the same tournaments, and like you're only getting 7 rounds by 7 p.m. and like you're not even getting all 9 rounds. You have to come back for another day, play another 2 rounds and things like that. So the idea that it's proven now, like the standard has been set, in my humble opinion, that it's been set, that you're like, well, like, why can't we just always do 9 rounds in a time frame that gets everyone home for dinner? So I think that like the pacing, the judges there, the staffing there, moving that was all phenomenal. And yeah, I hope that we delivered. I really do. I hope everyone really enjoyed the stream. And again, like those feedback questions, like getting out on Pro Play Games Facebook, on their X, adding them, letting them know like, hey, we wish that this was done differently. What can we do different for Denver? What can we do different for Orlando at the end of the year? Like these aren't stopping, right? This wasn't a one-time show. This is a traveling show that's really just made for the community, that gets you guys out there, gives you another excuse to go play Disney Lorcana. My last and final hoorah is, DLCs last year were such an experience. They were so much fun. I made so many friends. I met so many people that every single DLC I got to, it just got to the point between Atlanta and Seattle. They're like, man, this is like, I just know this guy now. Like, we're just like friends, and the biggest one for me is a player like Luke, like Wonderland the Wizard, because we're not on the same team. I don't think we've ever even played a game against one another, if I'm being completely honest. But every single DLC that I got to, that I was able to talk to him, like we just got closer and closer and closer. I was very, very supportive of the ICL when it first going. Like I was really hopeful that went off and got off the ground, and that was able to be good and be great. And I had not seen Luke, since NACC, like someone that I had seen like on a monthly basis and like developed this real nice, like fun friendship with. I went 6-7 months without seeing him. And like, that is like a sad thing. But the idea that we had 400 players come to Texas, and I'd seen so many of these players that I had met last season, just that were there to enjoy Disney Lorcana and have fun. It was really great to like have that again. And it made me so excited for DLC Season 2, for sure. I'm like over the moon that we're going to have 2,048 player tournaments and hopefully another 2,000 in attendance. Like that would be my real hope. So yeah, like hopefully those rooms are for like 4,000 or 5,000 players and we all just kind of get to enjoy Disney Lorcana again. But that's definitely what is that same energy and that same feel is what the summits are. Like they have the ability to be big. Like it says 512 players. I would not be shocked if they didn't have 1,000. Like I'm just saying, you can definitely get there. So I love it. I really, really do love. But yeah, I don't know how you do it, man. Between work and family, balance, and just life in general, on top of all the Lorcana, I'm envious. Well, the first thing I can say is that family is everything. And if it were not for my family, it would not be possible. My wife was obviously very fortunate. You know what? She was able to be there with us this weekend. Shout out to TFM Kylie. She made Saturday and Sunday so much easier because anything that I really needed to happen that I couldn't just ask anyone else to do, I was able to say like, hey, can you just please go do this for us? Like, can you please be part of this production in this way for us? It made that much more of a difference. So I'm so grateful that she did get to be here and be a part of this situation because she really did make Saturday and Sunday much more like easier for me, for sure, is like in my role. But like even that, like, you know, Kylie is a great mother and she's always willing to like take the time and stay with the kids. So I'm able to travel and do those things. But then I have to give a shout out to TFM Nana. TFM Nana like had both of my children for the last basically 6 days, if I'm being completely honest. And without that type of family support and the ability to like have someone that I can trust with to take care of my children, it would not be easy to do as much Lorcana as I have. And I'm definitely grateful for all those things. It's very important to me. But yeah, it's tough. I do love this game so much, and it's very nice that I'm able to, you know, meet as much of the community as I can because of it. It's the same thing with DLC Season 2. You know, the other concept of like now in Season 2, I'm the type of person that I have always wanted to travel the world, and every single time I've had the opportunity to go to some other place, there's always been an excuse made. You know, like something happens to where I can't do it, but like can't means won't. And it just turns out that like, oh, in this situation, like it's not going to happen. DLCs being the way they are, being distributed the way they are, it gives me the opportunity to say like, nope, I know what the next 18 months are. I know I can schedule out these dates to go to these events. So I'm just going to make my best opportunity and I'm going to do my very, very best to get to the events that I want to get to. So I'm very, very excited to have the support system that I have. It'd be impossible without them. So, you know, it's very, very important to have that for sure. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful without a doubt. Yes. She loves Ed. She loves Big Sisu. And she loves the guy with the long hair, the wizard Luke Wonderland. So that is all very, very, very true statements. TFM Mana is an absolute blessing. But yeah, I think that's going to be it today, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming out and hanging out with me. We'll be back Thursday night with TFM, Mr. the one, the only Dick Burns. Probably some members of the community is the goal. I'm going to try and get some people in and come and talk about their experience. I think that would be a lot of fun for you guys to hear from them. And yeah, the meta report hopefully out tomorrow morning, maybe tonight, but probably tomorrow morning. And yeah, thanks guys so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to get out of here and yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I finished my coffee a little bit ago, but maybe some of you are still on the West Coast, like Dad Kana. Shout out to Dad Kana for hanging out with us. He's a great guy. Missed you this weekend as well. So yeah, we'll see you guys all later and next time.